Yeah, you're starting up for sure. All right. Good morning. This is what is it, April 21st? I got Neil on. I think I'll have a couple more folks coming in. I think Alvaro and Paul are coming in a little bit later. But this is the first state of the network after the Solana transition. Exciting stuff. Neil, what are you looking at right now? You've got a lot on your plate.
Just trying to understand it all and see what's available to us now. Solana's opened up such a world that there's different opportunities than there were before. Liquidity providers, just swapping. On a loan right now is I've seen some incredible returns already. Not personally, just people getting incredible returns, and just wondering what we could do with it. All right.
Yeah. You know, I'm let's see. I should start off by saying I was wrong about this transition. I thought this was going to take like months. I thought they were going to fuck it up. I thought they were going to roll it back. And man, it hasn't been flawless, but it's been about as close as you can get for something as complex as this. So just want to publicly say, like, hey, I was wrong about that. Good job, Helium team.
No, I think what you said was important. There have been issues. They're not massive. We expected them to have issues, so we're not surprised. So
Yeah.
they're not that gigantic, and we're not taking them as being bad. Just knew something was going to happen. It was a lot about setting expectations, right?
Yep. Yep. All right, we got a new guest in here. Alvaro, I don't know. You've been on some shows before. I don't think you've been on State of the Network.
Hi, no, not here. Thank
Okay.
you, Nick.
Cool.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome. I wanted to get you in here because I love your kind of economist take on all this stuff, like this really sensible take. And we've got all these questions about staking and delegating and what you should do with your tokens and how long the whole thing's going to last and token sinks and the rest of it. So I thought maybe we'd start with kind of your broad, let's say, reaction to the new system and then kind of what you're looking at.
So I think it follows the similar dynamics, right? The key aspect here is that we are extending the lockup periods, right? The default lockup periods, which is interesting also from the point of view of how that's going to constrain the liquid supply of HNT. Positive side is that everything is transparent, right? So we are going to be able to see what major holders are doing and what the overall community and HNT holders are, how they are taking this in terms of a strategy. I think so. My advice, and this is not financial advice, of course, but is to first. I think that the most important part um, is to do some risk management and put that before any kind of rush, right, or of need to get rewards. I think
Yeah.
that's the most important thing, because as we have seen with the markets, and for each particular case and each particular person's budget, it's important to have liquidity, right? So I think that's the key aspect. And for the rest, of course, taking advantage of this land rush period is important. And then most of it, the things that I'm researching and discovering are details that are important to keep into account, right? So, for example, dividing the stakes into different lots, right? So that you are able to have more flexibility also
Yeah.
to delegate between different sub-DAOs. That's an interesting aspect. Yeah, but overall, I think it won't change too much the dynamics. So that's important, interesting. I'm also happy about how performant is Solana even during these days, right, where most of us are playing with it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's
that's
been
that's
amazing how fast it is. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, let's see. So, I mean, the questions, I'll start out with this. All of these questions are all the staking and delegation questions as far as what you should do are unanswerable by anyone on the show. And none of this is financial advice, right? You got to figure this shit out on your own. I think at the same time, it's pretty reasonable to just think about like, okay, what are the implications of and maybe some of the possible outcomes of staking for 4 years versus 1 month. I'm seeing, in the chat, Chad Dawson / Bobby is saying everyone should lock up tokens for a minimum of 1 month, since you're not going to sell anyway. And I think those kinds of things are stuff like we've got to ask ourselves, like, what are we planning on doing? What are some of the intents? Like, I locked up a ton of HNT, and then Neil had said this morning, he's like, dude, there's these LP pools, like, check this shit out. I was like, fuck, I locked up all my HNT. I can't do anything with it. So I think there's probably some opportunities coming down the pipe in this Solana ecosystem. They're like, might be good to have a little bit of HNT standing by.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? To participate in DeFi, and those markets are going to be started. So that's going to be important, right? To have some liquidity and to be able to participate. So that's I think a great advice.
Yeah, Paul, good to see you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you. Sorry for being late.
Yeah,
Busy a bit with
we got some pipe hitters on here today. I got all the smart people I know. Let's see. So what are you guys thinking about this land rush thing? And Neil, maybe I'll start with you. Are you thinking like, I'm going to chunk everything I've got into a 4-year stake and kind of get as much as I can?
No.
Or what's your general strategy?
I'm nervous. Obviously, it's a brand new system. I don't want to go too deep too quickly, and like you say, make a mistake and suddenly lose all my liquidity. So
Right.
I wouldn't put anything up that I wouldn't be comfortable with losing. And I have made some 4-year bets, but it's not enough that I've got more reserve than I have put in. Sensible. And if I want to make a change in 7 days' time because I want to get more of the land rush bonus, I can. But if I hadn't have done that, I would have been locked in for 4 years and no choice.
Yeah. No, I locked in like 1 HNT at a time. Just like, hey, I want to see how this thing works. I can totally lose 1 HNT. That's completely fine. Let's see. So let's talk a little bit, Paul, about we were talking this morning, like, the console's not working. It's due to some magic link messing around. But data seems, except for a short little bump, seems like it's still flowing on the network. What are you seeing?
Yeah, for sure. Data is good. I mean, we have a different problem on console currently. One is related to Magic Link, so just a problem for logging. I've seen I've got a message months ago from Magic saying that something is going to change and we may adapt to it. But I mean, I don't know if it's related, but it was 2 days ago, so maybe it's a change. And maybe the console team missed that, and so they will apply a patch. So I'm not afraid of this one. The second one I see is on Stripe. People cannot buy DCs on Stripe currently, which is not clear on 2. So I don't know what we have this problem, but maybe it's just a question of refreshing the JavaScript library to get an update or something like this. And unfortunately, I was not able to do a test as has been delog from my console, and so I can
I'm the same. The same.
But data is safe, which is a more important, right?
Yeah. I mean, like my devices are working. That's what I care about right now. Alvaro, Borderless is pretty big in Solana, if I remember right. You guys are at least pretty supportive of the Solana thing. Yeah, good.
Not so much, not originally. We are very large originally in the Algorand ecosystem.
That's right. Yeah, you guys are Algorand. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, we're happy about the whole migration to Solana. I think that the key aspect here is all that we're going to enable, right, and all the free hands that we're going to have at the Helium Foundation and Nova Labs to continue building the core aspects of the network and the important stuff. So we are supporters about this totally.
Yeah, I saw, and I tried to put a bunch of these links in the description. I actually did a little bit of extra work up front, which I usually don't do on these state of the networks. There's a link in there to a dashboard on the transactions on the Solana network, and it looks fucking bananas what happened when Helium came over. It just went from like, normal to absolutely crazy for a while as all the NFTs got minted. It's interesting to think about. This could be an inflection point for Solana, where all of a sudden they take on a giant, basically they got a new blockchain added to them, to their already pretty active one. So
Totally, yeah. I mean, this is going to bring a lot of usage to Solana. It's interesting because Solana was positioning itself as a chain, very high performance monolithic blockchain oriented to DeFi and mostly more financially related um, applications, right? But with Helium migrating to it and some other deepin projects on Solana, it's also positioning very well to be the chain of choice for deepin projects. And for interoperability between deepin projects, that's very important, I think. So yeah, they are also growing from what deepin is bringing, and that's great.
yeah, yeah. Let's see. Neil, you brought up this liquidity pool thing with like what was it, like 1,000% APR this morning, and it reminded me of 2 years ago when I was throwing stuff into what was that thing, Avalanche, where it's like, oh yeah, 90 million, whatever percent APR, whatever the stupid shit was. From that, I kind of learned like, whoa, maybe I should back off because I lost my ass on that. What are you what are you looking at on the Solana side where you're saying like, okay, here are opportunities that you're seeing that are new that you're going to try out?
I obviously do a bit of research first and just wait to see how things go before I just jump in. But the liquidity pool seems to make sense as a new way of earning, and then there's obviously arbitrage on the price that I've seen quite a few people today doing really well with. So it's just where the market's settling in. I'm just not sure where to go and what to see. So that's what I'm researching at the moment. I'm definitely in on staking, but yeah.
One point which is totally unclear to me is, I mean, normally we have a value for IoT and mobile that is directly linked to the HNT and sorry, I missed the term, but the stacking that is being made in the different token. So you have a direct conversion. You can always convert your IoT into HNT, so it gives a value to IoT and mobile. But currently, I don't know where to get this information, and that's quite important because it's, I mean, the right price for this token. So one of the problems with liquidity price of IoT and mobile, it should be based on this. And I mean, I don't know if you know where to get this information.
I don't know. Neil's shaking his head. Alvaro, you look like you're
Yeah,
nodding along, like you
No,
understand
still
some of this
new.
stuff.
No, no. In our case, for this, since you can be dynamic about it and you can be flexible, we're going to do some A/B testing at the early days and see the earnings, see how these tokens are priced, and then re-strategize our delegation strategy. So yeah, that's how we're going to make it. The important thing is to get right the initial deployment of staking, right? To take advantage of the land rush period while keeping liquidity at our funds. So that's the key decision that we are in the process of concluding.
And right now, are you basically doing like a 50-50 split down the line, or is your strategy kind of top secret, or how are you thinking of it?
Yeah, roughly something like that, roughly. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I mean, we have no problem in locking for around 6 months to 1 year because we are a closed-ended fund, so we have a lot of um, we know perfectly when we are going to have to start distributing to our limited partners.
Yeah.
So it's easier for us in that aspect. So yeah, we are going to lock a large chunk of our position into 2 years, taking advantage of the land rats period.
Yep.
Another significant part to 1 year, and some smaller part to 6 months, without the so both of those will be cliff, so that when we approach to the 6 months, we will enable the recurring staking, right? So we will
Got it.
always keep our HNT stake for 6 months, which is the amount of time that we need to for us is the sweet spot between flexibility, liquidity, but also earning potential for that HNT. But yeah, that's for the part that we will decide to stake. We'll keep also a significant percentage liquid for the purpose of participating in DeFi, because we believe that that's one of the best value add that we can bring to the Helium community, right? Bootstrapping those markets, adding liquidity to those markets, and yeah, participating in DeFi. Because if not, we're going to have markets will not function properly for pricing HNT, for pricing the sub-DAO tokens. We're going to need liquidity in those pools. So that's important.
Dang. And you guys got to think on a way bigger scale than me. I'm like, oh, look at my like 700 HNT. I'm a baller. And you guys have to think like, okay, we're part of providing liquidity to the greater market, not just to a couple folks. So you're like a very different position than certainly than me. Kind of cool.
Yeah. Well,
cool
we'll do our part. So and you know, this is the power of so many smallholders is going to actually make this work or not work. I mean,
right.
The supply in hands of funds from HNTs is not so high. So because of the way that this token has been originally distributed, right, through mining, and mining HNT is extremely difficult at scale. So that's why this is one of the most and best distributed assets that we see in crypto, in Web3. And that's also very important to take always into account.
Yeah. Let's see. All right. So according to, I saw one of the you guys in here. Let's see. Brian, Helium Explorer network status has the estimated swap. I think what is it, Paul? Right now, like 32,000 to 1 for IoT HNT. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, this is what we see in Explorer. It's 32k IoT per HNT, and the swap, the liquidity currently is something like 3k per one HNT. So that's totally crazy.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely like for super sharp traders, probably a great time to really increase what they've got. But man, for people like me that are a little bit more nervous on that side, it's like maybe I'll just sit on my hands for a little bit. Let's talk Cliff versus constant, because that has created a constant source of confusion. Neil, I think you've explained it a couple times. Do you want to go through it again and maybe talk about what you're thinking of doing as a standard for yourself, or do you think it'll change every time?
You want me to talk about Cliff and what I'm using?
Yeah. So Cliff versus constant. Yeah, go ahead.
So Cliff starts the cooldown for whatever length of time you've picked. So say you pick 4 years, that'll start the cooldown immediately. And constant, the cooldown doesn't start until you start it. So if you go 6 months down the line on a 4-year lockup and start it at that point, you go for 4 years, right? So it's obviously a lot riskier doing it that, because you not only gotta be assured the market's going to do what it's going to do, but you then have to call it down for 4 years and then you get your funds out. So it's a very, very all-in position to be in at constant. So as a personal person, I've gone YOLO and just done a constant for 4 years to get that extra bonus. Trackback as a company have done Cliff for 6 months, because you just don't know what's happening in the future. So, and the point is that position could be extended, that position could be changed, that position could be split. So you just got to see how it goes. Personally, I'm not betting anything that I wouldn't be happy to lose.
Yeah, I think that's the game for sure. Alvaro, you talked about time frames for how long you were doing it, but I don't think we hit Cliff versus constant. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, so we are using Cliffs for the lots that we are staking for longer than 6 months, so the 1 year and the 2 year lots. And when we reach the point in the cliff where the rewards are lower than the 6 months constant in terms of voting power, that's when we start to kick in the 6 months constant for all of the lots. So that's our minimum, let's say, staking length, 6 months constant.
Okay.
Because if we see that there's market conditions that are extremely favorable, or we need to have liquidity for any other reason, we will always be able to wait for 6 months. So we will, for us, it's eventually it will take us to a state that we are very familiar with the old validators and how it used to work, right?
Yep. And just to hit it, so staking gives you voting power, delegation earns you income. Um, just so folks kind of get that part, because I saw there's a lot of confusion on there. One thing that is pretty important to me about this today's show was to say, hey, we got Neil, Paul, Alvaro, and myself. We got at least three folks who are, and I guess I'll include myself, like we all kind of know what's going on in Helium. And all of us have been fairly confused and learning as fast as we can this week. So if you're watching this and you're like, dude, I don't get any of this, that's totally fine. Like the sharpest folks out there, certainly kind of some of the sharpest and most well read in folks I know, also don't get this. So we're all learning kind of as fast as we can, but not knowing this is totally fine right now. So yeah, did you
Yeah, I
guys
think
do?
as a bottom line, Nick, I think that for the average Joe, this is very difficult to model and to understand. And I think even for the most sophisticated investors, there's so many hypotheses that even if you build the most crazy and complex model, it most of the time will be useless, since most of the inputs are hypotheses that will change widely. So I think that the best decision to make is just look at your personal finances. When are you going to need this liquidity, and don't lock it for longer than that. I think that's the best advice, because trying to maximize rewards, it could backfire, right? If you need the liquidity for any reason, and you're forced to to sell other types of assets or whatever, right? So,
Yeah. Yep. No, thank you for saying that. It's always nice to hear. I think a lot of us run around like,
my
everyone
bottom
else knows
line
more
on
than
this.
me. But it's like, sharpest folks out there, like, hey, I don't know what's going on, or I'm not totally certain what the thing to do is. And I think that point about, because there's so many unknown inputs, that the output is really difficult to pin down and say you can rely on it, or any kind of prediction.
We've had days of data on Solana, haven't we? So making a decision on 2 days of data is not a good idea. So, don't go all in. Take your time. There's Land Rush bonus. It's got another 7 days on it if you want to join in on that. See how things go. Ask around. Make informed decisions. Don't just rush into it.
Yep. Let's see. I'm seeing in the chat people asking about if they need to update their hotspots. Nope, you don't need to update your hotspot. You actually don't need to do anything at all. You could go to sleep for 6 months and wake up, and you'd probably be fine. If you want to kind of mess around and you like this stuff and you want to tinker, you can totally do that. But tinkering carries that risk that you can make a wrong decision. Let's see. So the next.
Sorry, I also see some people asking, saying that they cannot get any information about their hotspot, witnessing or beaconing. But it's quite important. Through the wallet, you can see the reward hotspot per hotspot on every day. It's currently at 1 a.m. I don't know if it's UTC time, but okay, something like so. Every time you get your income from every hotspot, and it's really good to have a look at it to make sure your hotspots are correctly running until you get all the application updated with the off-chain information to see the witness and beacon, and maybe making sure that they are working.
Okay, I haven't messed around with it enough because I've just trusted that Helium knows what they're doing. Like, yeah, things are going to keep working. But I've seen a ton of questions about, I think, this specific thing, Paul, which is really two things, is how do I see what my hotspots are earning? And then I saw a bunch of other stuff, like basically how do I see what Helium Explorer used to show? So it sounds like from what you're saying, and I haven't looked at this, you can see what's going on kind of once a day, but you can't track it minute by minute. Is that right?
Depend, in fact. The witness and beacon information are delivered, I think, something like on every epoch, or 10 minutes or an hour.
Okay.
I'm not really sure, but there is a lot of file generated per day. So we're gonna have this information on regular basis. Not, I think, not at the. I mean, previously we had information 1 minute after. And here I think it's going to be longer. I'm not totally sure because I'm just processing history for right now, but it's going to be a bit longer, but we're going to get it. But for reward, I understand that the reward are distributed to the hotspot once a day. I don't know if the reward of chain files will be at a faster period of time.
Right.
We can have a kind of desynchronization between witness and beacon that could be more real time. and rewards that could be more longer time. So it's gonna change your habits for sure.
Okay. Well, fuck, if Paul doesn't know, it's pretty okay that none of us know, because that guy knows what's going on. Neil, you've been messing with it a little bit. I saw you kind of nodding along. Anything to add to that, as far as like looking at your hotspot and getting data out of it, or getting data about it?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way right now is to use 𝐻elium_Geek, Hotspotty. There's Helium Board as well. They're all transferring over, and you can see that witness information. And what's better now as well in 𝐻elium_Geek, because we're off chain, you now see all the witnesses that weren't rewarded as well.
Okay.
So any of the witnesses that weren't selected are in there as well. So in fact, you're getting disco mode back because you can see every witness. So that information is available, but then actually pairing it to what the reward you get, that's once a day, midnight GMT.
Okay.
So there's a disconnect.
Got it. Alvaro, this is something I've seen in the Helium team, and obviously you're not, on Helium Foundation, but as kind of a bigger picture macro looker at these things. It seems like the intent with the Helium project is that the foundation says, like, look, we're going to put the tools out there, or we're going to put the information out there. We're going to let the community build the tools. And the latest piece is, like, it used to be Explorer was free and everybody could see all this stuff, and now they're relying on folks like Hotspotty to provide that as a paid service. Same thing with Paul. When you look at that from, I guess, an economist perspective, like, hey, let's let the market decide a lot of these things, does that seem super healthy? Are you worried about it? Do you have any kind of perspective on that? Do you think, oh, this is good, bad, or doesn't matter at all, or you don't have an opinion?
No, I think it's a good approach.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good approach. I mean, in a decentralized network, what we need is services that are creating the different layers, right? That will provide the final service. There's a lot of parts of the system to be built yet, but of course, there's some parts of it that are very difficult to build a business model on top of. And those are the ones that I think that the Helium Foundation, as they are doing already, they should keep subsidizing, because if not, the market won't fill those gaps, and some of them are critical. In the case of the Explorer, the Hotspotty guys are doing a great thing, and they have the opportunity to upsell their services, which is a great product. So for them, it's kind of like the free part of the freemium business model. So I think that's great, how they oriented that. But we need a strong foundation subsidizing and giving out grants for all these parts that are very difficult to build business models on top of. And whenever there's a good business model to be built on, we see that those opportunities get rushed in, right, by entrepreneurs and businesses building. Like, for example, selling data credits at a premium. We've seen a lot of services building that, and there's so many other opportunities. So yeah, I think it's a mix.
Okay. So Paul, I mean, you're doing the data credits at a premium. Neil, you're building the track pack thing. Like, what do you guys think about this idea? And are there critical services that the Helium Foundation should be supporting? You're like, man, they really should be subsidizing this thing.
What I see
I'll start with Paul. Sorry.
what I see as a limit for this is we had a lot of change going on in parallel, and I mean the community is not really large. So people, I mean, we have a really large community of users, but the community of people developing stuff is not so large. On my case, there is a IP70, which is impacting the console, and so I'm spending a lot of time on developing chip start stuff. But I also developed a service, 𝐻𝐢𝐿, for monitoring the hotspots, and so I also need to update to the off-chain stuff. And it's basically, I mean, a really small team have to redevelop all what Helium has developed previously. So it's a huge amount of work, and basically at the end it rely on one or two guys. So it's in my point of view, it's a kind of danger, as we don't have a business model for this. I mean, 𝐻𝐢𝐿, we do not pay the electricity of the server, so we don't pay the server itself, and so on. And yeah, it's a bit better on on data things, but I mean just paying the server basically currently. So that's that's a risk for the network, because if the quality of the service is decreasing, and honestly, I mean, I really like what Hotspotty is doing, but previous version of Explorer and new version of Explorer, it's a bit a jump in the past,
Yeah.
And so for newcomer on the system, it's, I mean, do you trust a service if you see that the look and feel is decreasing, the information is disappearing, services ecosystem of application is reducing, just because, I mean, just take the example of Explorer and all that stuff. No one is yet providing a free API, and no one will do that. So everyone has to make a kind of ETL. I'm running ETL, so it's basically a server with 80 core, 60 gigabyte of RAM, 20 terabyte of SSD, 4 terabyte NVMe. Okay, and it's not for everyone. It's just for managing the services. So for something like 500 people. So it makes a huge difference in my point of view, that the ecosystem, I mean, the entry point for someone that want to create value on the system is becoming really high, and that's a risk for me, my point of view.
Got it.
Yeah.
So Alvaro, I'll come back to you and ask you kind of what else you see. But Neil, let's go over to you and talk about this idea. I know you've been pretty strident about the foundation's got to support stuff. What are you thinking?
No, I don't like centralized control. So at the end of the day, I think it's so much better that someone with a business model can run these services. I mean, there's the point of the foundation shouldn't be leaning on one person more than the other, and there are other tools out there. It would be nice to see options to go to more than one site, because there are providers that do different things in different ways. But overall, yeah, there was a big bill to run Explorer. There was a big bill to run the API. It's the same with the console VIP. They've been supporting us for ages for free, but there's a cost there, and that all needs to be accounted for. It's not just coming out of thin air. It's being paid for. So if we can reduce the cost there by spreading it out, and people that with business models supporting these services, it's much better.
Do you have any idea of what that cost is generally? And that can just be kind of orders of magnitude. Do you think that's like $100 a month to run Explorer? Was it $1,000 a month? Do you think it was 10,000? Like, what do you think it was that Helium Foundation was absorbing on our behalf? Unknown. Paul probably has a better idea.
Yeah, true. If you want to run an Explorer, I mean, as I said, it really depends the implementation you have. But in my point of view, in my situation, if I consider just the ETL to get the data, extract the data, and put them in a database, it's cost me something like $300 a month for that server. And then if I want to create a front end that support, I don't know, thousands of people coming every day to watch the data, it should be something like 2 or 3 times this. And in addition of this, you have to add something like 2 months of development, and you have to add maintenance, which is also someone on duty to make it working. And basically, this is what is costing the most. I mean, you have the infrastructure on the side, but you have the people time on the other side, and it's really big at the end. Yeah, so you can estimate it's something like $5,000 a month at a minimum to run such infrastructure, and really a minimum.
Yeah, we'll see how Hotspotty does. That's Alvaro. What other things are you seeing? Like, all right.
No, I just wanted to do a small comment. I think it's way more than that. So I agree with Paul. It's I think we're giving numbers that are I think from what I probably heard a lot of time ago, and I probably don't remember a lot, but it's north of 100K, way more a year to do this. And it was also
Blockchain was very involved. I remember the same.
Yeah, Blockchain was very involved with this, and they were helping out the Helium Foundation with this part.
That's right. Yeah. No, I should ask
those guys. Yes, guys.
Okay, so I mean, there's this thing. It's pretty interesting. You look at a market. There's this like kind of public good. It's just like having a highway. You know, we all drive on highways, and none of us think about paying for them kind of per mile that we drive. But someone's paying for them. In this case, or in highway cases, it's taxes. But there's a couple things that are instrumental to an economy or an ecosystem working really well. And it sounds like being able to see what's going on across it really easily is something that kind of quote should be provided, but it sounds like we're going to let the market figure it out. It'd be pretty exciting to see what the solutions are for that, and maybe there's an unlock in this kind of DeFi crypto space that doesn't exist in normal markets, although I doubt that. I bet it's all pretty much the same. It just might be a little bit more frictionless in crypto. So yeah, is there anything else you see? Good.
I think we're going to start seeing like dashboards pop up about, you know, choices and things about how much it's all converting to and things. People in Helium have come to cryptocurrency for the first time and they barely understood Helium as it was. And now we're putting them in a DeFi world. They need like explainers, they need dashboards, they need statistics, they need to be able to pull into the data. And it's the same with Explorer. Explorer's been completely rewritten to work on Solana.
Yep.
So we can get it back to a state where it was, but we've got to be the builders that take it there and demand what's to go on there and build it. So yeah, I think we're going to see a lot coming up. It's going to be really cool, but it's just so early, right?
Yeah, and the most interesting part also is that, you know, in Web3 we are moving value, right? Everything is about value. So monetizing these services should be way easier than what, you know, the old paradigm in Web2 where you used to build a website, you know, for information of anything or dashboards about anything, and it's very difficult to monetize those if it's not for advertisements and you know, polluting your website. In this case, you know, you can build a very cool website with dashboards and very useful information about Helium, and then offer some services like so anything, any service that can provide. So, for example, you can point to DeFi services that could pay you fees, you know, for directing traffic and the HNT there. You can do splitting apps. There's so many things to be done, and there's value flowing in this ecosystem, and it flows through the blockchain now with Solana. I mean, I think it's easier to monetize all of these services than before. So hopefully someone takes advantage of this, and we start seeing great apps being built on top of Helium.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to think outside, you know, in the wider world of the whole AI explosion that's happened in the past 6 months. Is it seems reasonable that someone can kind of figure out not only like, oh, here's a dashboard, but also start to link it into, hey, here's like a super smart dashboard that works for you, that goes specifically to your whatever requirements that you want to know, whether or not your hotspots are online, or you want to know how much your hotspots should earn, or what the best thing to do is with your staking. I think that's a pretty cool thing is let's say you had an account you could log into and you say like, hey, I've got 1,000 HNT and 7 hotspots that here you can look at what they've been doing. Like, what should I do with the assets I have? And we may not be there today, but I bet within a month or so, we'll probably be pretty darn close to like, oh, well, the best thing to do is sell this hotspot and take this other hotspot and put it there, and then take the rest of your HNT and do whatever it is with that. So pretty cool to see that stuff there. Let's see. Okay, we talked about data transfer. Oh, one more thing on the Solana piece, or not one more thing, but certainly an important thing is, look, in the Solana world, there's a ton of NFT stuff going on. I think that is both exciting and potentially super fucking dangerous. So be careful when you're doing this new thing. Like, don't get sucked in. If you see stuff that's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true, right? I think to Neil's point, like, I'm sure there's like 1,000% APR right now, but I've lost a fucking boatload of money chasing stuff like that, and I would rather that the rest of you watching don't have to pay the same price to learn that mistake. So just be really careful. If it's too good to be true, don't believe it, and don't bet anything you can't afford to lose. That's like $160,000 lesson for me. So no need for you to pay that as well. And don't give up your towards. Yeah.
I did it like 2 years ago. I didn't know what I was doing with crypto, and I ended up losing about £40,000 from swapping it when I didn't need to do anything. You know, so you just have to be careful, and I think that's most people learn it, but just we try and warn people not to make the large mistakes that we make, but we've all done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, good, good.
No, and it's not your keys, not your crypto, right? And whenever you're using some of these DeFi services, the tokens are no longer in your keys. So those tokens are no longer yours. So I think counterparty risk is something that the industry is taking more and more seriously after these last events that we had with FTX and Genesis and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the most important part. And this is from the, rule number one, not your keys, not your crypto, and be careful when you're using these DeFi services, and those are taking the tokens from your wallets. That's important.
Got it.
And yeah, Nick, I think that's key what you said. If it's too good to be truth, it's probably because it's not so good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Let's see. We talked about data transfer going down. Let's see. Neil, you did a really cool little video on getting Sol into your wallet. I'm doing like the common issues kind of FAQ part of our thing. And you can see this on the YouTube description so you can follow along with what we're doing. It seemed pretty easy, right, Neil? To swap.
Yeah, using Jupiter is so quick in the dApps browser. You can just go in and you can see the rate and you just connect your wallet, and within a couple of seconds you've instantly swapped. So just be really careful at the moment because the rates are so low. It's just where everything's settling. So don't just go swap everything you've done. But if you do want to go do it, it's really quick. And there's the other one as well is if you've got not enough Sol to do some of these transactions, there's actually a page you can go on the docs now, and there's in the dApps browser and trade a little bit of HNT to Sol for fees. Okay. So that's in the dApps browser now. I think it's like the third or fourth one down. It says docs.helium. But you can go on that in the dApps browser and just swap a tiny bit of HNT to have enough of fees for enough of staking and everything. So it's really cool seeing these little services pop up and being able to do that. Like they built an app there that just swaps, and it's cool.
Yeah. It is pretty rad to see all this stuff. Let's see. We talked about where you can see your miner earnings activity. You've got I think as far as I know, you can't see that unless you're looking for it once a day. And other than that, you can see it on, was it Helium Geek and Hotspotty? What was the other one you said, Neil?
Helium Board is another one.
Board, is that BOARD?
Yeah.
Yep. And Paul, you said Watchium it's not working, or it is?
No, not yet. We still have some development to do, and we are syncing the data from the history right now.
Okay, cool. But I mean, that's been super useful for me for helping me in the past knowing my hotspots were up or down. I'm getting
back next week. Next week you're gonna start to get some updated information on it.
Right on. Super cool. Let's see. I'm going to change this over to a 5-person show. So give me a second to sort out all the names.
I am literally here coding away in the background. I'll jump off. Be way easier.
Oh, change my name.
Hey.
There we go. We on? We good? You guys hear me okay?
Yes, I can, but we can't hear Nick, I think.
I muted myself. There we go. My bad.
Okay.
And Neil dropped off, so I can just go. Damn it! Hang on, give me a second. Sorry, Scott.
No, good. All good.
Let's go back.
I figured that was me.
No, that's me not getting everything right. I'll just make a quick change here, and then we should be good. Good God.
And I'm Neil now. There we go.
Yeah, you'll get there. While I'm changing your name, what's going on your end, Scott? Head of Helium Foundation, probably be pretty good to get your take on the deal.
Yeah, honestly, it is. It's all triage right now. That as far as we're concerned, look, this is months in the making, if not over a year. It's funny how much when do we actually kind of start the clock of when this process all started? Yeah. I am genuinely look, I know there's still stuff that we're kind of ironing out kinks, but I think that the core devs did a real bang up job on this. Considering where I've seen other major technical kind of transformations, like this was relatively smooth. There's a huge coordination effort here. Whenever I talk to folks about kind of the Helium ecosystem and the volume of stakeholders and how big the populations are kind of on a per stakeholder basis, there's a huge coordination effort here. So this week has just been like making sure, like, okay, like what do we need to kind of play whack-a-mole? What do we need to get some comms out here? What's still ambiguous? Where can we do better education? And you guys have probably all seen that in the announcements, where there's just the updates each day of like, okay, what's still outstanding? Where are we at right now? Where they're like, I can't see this thing. Okay, is that a like switch something over from DevNet to mainnet? Is it really just we got to push an update that's going to fix a front end issue? So generally, like we are all over here just playing like pure triage of like, okay, what's the most urgent? Where we got to go be high touch? Like today, for example, it's checking in with all the makers right now of, hey guys, did you push all your app updates out? Do you have all the SOL you need? Again, like pushing out the extra tooling that we need as far as, we dusted everybody's wallet with SOL to make sure everybody had enough for those initial transactions. Wasn't enough on some of this stuff, so let's make sure, let's build another tool. Let's get that stuff out there. So we're working around the clock just to make sure everybody can, we want to get back to better experience and kind of smooth network as quickly as we can. So we're just making sure we're available to the community as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a ton of questions about all this stuff, and I think we were talking a little bit earlier on the show. Is like, man, I am just shocked at how well the thing went, despite all of like the little, minor disasters and small problems.
There's always going to be hiccups, yeah.
But damn, for as big as this thing is, pretty incredible to see that it's actually working right now. With a few small changes or a few small errors.
Yeah.
Really cool.
No, I was just saying, I mean, I'm super excited about it. I think that it's one of those, for the folks that I have been playing with, different crypto protocols and toys and apps for a while, some of this stuff is more familiar, and I truly appreciate that. I know Helium was kind of the gateway crypto drug for a lot of people in the community. So on one hand, it's super exciting that people are like, holy shit, like Solana is really fast. And like, yeah, I mean, the idea of some of the stuff that we were like, okay, let me get up and grab a coffee until this transaction is through on the Helium L1. The experience is going to be much better. But there is still so much education and stuff that I personally took for granted. And we would talk about as a team of, hey, a seed phrase and exporting a private key are two very different things. And we can't go out there and talk about derivation paths. Like, we got to boil this down to kindergarten simple. So you can expect from us, like we're taking, we're going to be doing like a weekly debrief over here of where do we got to get out more static content and education to make sure this is really simple for folks. I don't want, Nick, you and I have probably had the same like painful lessons. Like, I don't want anybody else getting rugged on anything. And, there's a fine line on where our job begins and ends in that kind of education and protection. Like, it is an open permissionless network. There is a lot of buyer beware for brand new novel technology. But we're going to do the absolute best we can with the resources that we have to make sure we can get stuff out there to help folks understand, how do you use all this stuff? What does it all mean? It's a lot. I get it.
Yeah. No, there's a ton going on. Huh. Let's see, Paul, anything you got while we got Scott on here that you're like, oh, let's see what you got.
Fixing consoling product.
Yeah. No, it's a nonstop thing.
Where's Joey? Where's Joey?
Yeah. Cool. Or Alvaro, anything on your end that's coming to mind as we talk through all this stuff?
Well, I mean, Scott and I, we talk a lot, so he knows what I think. But one of the coolest thing that I discovered, from playing with the Helium app is how it enables all these integrations with Solana and all the services in Solana. And I think that part of the app, it's really interesting and can enable a safe zone for experimenting within the approved or pre-approved, or at least safe Solana apps that there's out there. And I think it's great that to onboard a lot of HNT holders and people involved with Helium to the Solana ecosystem and learn what they can do with their tokens and Helium. So that's great. I think that part of the app, even if it's still in its early stages, it's going to have so much potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, and right now that's obviously, we're doing it through mobile web because a lot of this was prioritization of, native actual integration is going to be even smoother, but the idea that you can still do this through that kind of like mobile web experience, at least it puts that in front of folks like quickly. And Jupyter is a really fantastic tool, but the idea that we have so much access, like we're really still just kind of, it's definitely kind of tip of the iceberg of what's possible. But to have that initial liquidity on DeFi set up, the ease of that. Again, part of it is just flexibility. There are going to be folks in the ecosystem who are always going to want to transact through a centralized player and having some form of custody, whether that's qualified custody or just somebody else who's holding the token. But I think for a lot of people, it's really the not your keys, not your crypto. And we want everybody to be able to kind of have that flexibility, not to mention the idea of permissionless markets. It just opens up a lot more to our ecosystem that we've never had before. So it's pretty great, the idea that you can participate in so many more ways now. And we've been supporting those teams who are integrating, but a lot of it is really for the community to kind of take it and run with it from here. And we're just however we can support in that is going to be pretty critical, just kind of like for this bootstrapping phase.
Yeah. Scott, you're coming from a little bit more maybe native crypto background than a lot of folks in this space. Mm-hmm. When you're saying all of the stuff that Solana unlocks, are there specific things that you're looking at and you're like, hey, maybe you wouldn't get this if you didn't have the crypto background, but actually there's X, Y, and Z that is now possible that wasn't before and was really never on the roadmap for the Helium L1?
I mean, there's stuff that it's not necessarily that it wasn't on the roadmap. It's just that it was going to come so much later and involve, so much more like resource expenditure because we would have had to build all of it. So yeah, it's kind of, it's tough where to start because on one hand, the DeFi side gives us more markets. Leveraging the SPL standard, it's just going to make it easier and faster in a lot of integrations where instead of a custom L1 written in Erlang, it's just easier for these things to come to us and say, hey, like we're actually going to like quickly integrate Helium now that you guys are running on Solana. In the past, it was a different kind of effort where now we're already getting kind of more types of inbound interests around this stuff because people have seen the press, they've seen the news, which, by the way, that was part of what we kind of did in this process is let's get that conversation going and make sure there's relevance for HNT within more of the kind of crypto media side. And, there was a number of articles that came out this week about the migration. And that's great because it drives awareness. It drives more relevancy. So now we've got platforms coming in and saying, oh, like you're a very easy integration now. We can have more tools. We only have one qualified custodian for HNT, and there's a lot of investors that are out there. I think a lot of manufacturers are going to be looking for more of those traditional services. So that part, again, it's kind of the bridge between the crypto native side and the more traditional infrastructure. But yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm getting a little bit off topic, but back on the kind of crypto side of things, smart contract functionality. There was a lot of stuff that I think we've all wanted to see for a long time, and it's just going to happen faster now. I think dynamic market pricing has always been something that's been interesting to this entire community. The cost of running data through New York City versus the cost of running data through Nebraska. Sorry, I'm being US centric. I should come up with better international examples, but that stuff matters. And being able to do that, it's really going to help with the utility of the network overall because it's going to benefit hosts. It's going to be more pragmatic for the end user. So that stuff we can do it faster now. So I'm excited about that type of stuff because it just really supports the demand side.
Dig it. Paul, I mean, you've come at this from really the device side and making sure that devices work, and it's pretty easy for people to kind of work with your general business and program, are you also thinking about how do I integrate more of like the crypto Solana stuff in here? Or are you still focused on like, nope, I'm just doing devices. I'm going to leave all that crypto stuff to other people?
I don't know. I mean, the Solana is currently just a difficulty for me to get the NFT information about that spot and all that stuff.
Yep.
But I mean, once I will be more familiar with this, maybe I could imagine some interesting stuff for sure. But I mean, currently, back to the basis. I mean, we need to restore what we had previously. So restore working console, restore working information about that spot, and later on build some new stuff on it. So that's really, yeah, such a step for me, not today's steps.
Yeah. Yeah. Small baby steps. Alvaro, what are you thinking, man? We got a couple minutes left. Anything else that you've kind of looked at this and you're like, oh, there's some strategic implications of this that, may change the way that all of us
Yeah,
think
I
about
think
this?
what Scott and Paul were saying in that line, getting listed in new exchanges is going to be way easier now that HNT is an SPL. Like institutional custody is another very important aspect, as Scott brought up, and of course we suffered from that in the past. It was difficult to get involved also in governance with the old blockchain. So there, I mean, we're going to solve a lot of complexity, and we're looking forward to actually experiencing that.
Yeah, gosh, there's like all these giant problems that I don't think of as an individual like HNT or this institutional custody, like the kind of the much bigger pieces that eventually affect the value of the ecosystem as a whole. It's not just about one person putting up a hotspot and then we're like, oh yeah, it's all about the community. It's like, no. There's these three things. I'm actually curious about what you think about this, Scott. Is in all of these projects, it seems like there's three really important pieces. There's the community, there's the core, and then there's the customers. And all of them have to be a part of it. All of them have to be contributing. Do you think of any other kind of essential pieces to any of these deepen projects? Not just Helium. We can talk about Helium. Is there anything else you're like, oh yeah, you're missing someone else? Maybe it's the investors. Sorry, Alvaro.
Community, absolutely. That is like, it's arguably like that's the biggest asset that we have. So we have to, we're still thinking about kind of how we foster more of that and just kind of do a better job facilitating that. I know there's like little pieces here where we're trying to do more as far as funding global events, trying to make a few more hires that can kind of like help coordinate. Because one of the things I still am excited about us kind of moving forward on is creating a little bit of kind of like sovereignty within the ecosystem around like regional leads, just kind of take things and run with it. Because when I think about the different geographical needs, Lisbon, which is completely blanketed in the coverage, they're going to be focused so much more on like, let's put together new sensors. Let's talk about applications and use cases. Let's engage the public sector. Like the entire network is here. How do we get cities using it? How do you get businesses using it? Whereas, areas of South America and Africa where we're still building out coverage, that is back to the conversations that some of us take for granted, which is what's the right antenna, hotspot placement. We can always support in those things, but I want to be able to empower those communities to kind of run their own show, but give them the framework and give them the tools to go and do that. So we're still thinking about like how we scale community. Like that's still a thing that we can do a lot better on as far as from within our team. So I think there's that. Customers, absolutely, because one of the things that we always try to keep in the back of our mind, and we're certainly not there yet, you guys touched on it earlier, is how do we build this network to a place that the foundation doesn't have to exist? Like that's kind of where we need to go, is where do we get to as a network where the education, the tools, the connectivity, all these things can exist, that if the foundation went away, if Nova Labs went away, like this thing self-perpetuates because there's enough capital, there's enough tools, there's enough like incentives. And that's kind of always has to be part of that like North Star vision for us, like truly that like path to decentralization. So, but on the customer side, I still think there's, like areas of like fragmentation and LoRaWAN that like we can help like kind of drive on that side. We want to keep supporting on it. Sorry, and then what were the other? So it was customer, community.
So it's like community,
customer,
and then the core team, so that the Helium Foundation, and then the customers. In
protocol,
fact, funnily enough, we got pretty much everyone on the call. We got you for the, representing the core team. We got the community side is Alvaro and I, kind of very different sides of that. And then a customer I think of as Paul, is actually kind of using the network. I don't think there's anything else. Maybe
No, because I think community can mean so many different things, but I think in this context, we're kind of talking about it as like the supply side, the builders, very much. So to me, if we're talking in, like, yeah, absolutely, like that's kind of like, those are like the triangle of the, I'm trying to figure out what the right phrasing is, but like those are the pillars that effectively are like holding up the network. So yeah, and we kind of have, it's really, my background is in like scaling a venture, and I worked on a bunch of two-sided marketplaces, and like there's a lot of things that rhyme here on how do you think about supporting that supply side, the builders, the people who are really contributing, and it comes in different forms, but really making sure that the support is there in terms of education, content, financial resources. But yeah, it's kind of like at each stage that changes, and because Helium exists in a different state internationally, we kind of have to keep thinking of what's the stuff that we learned in the U.S., in Western Europe, that we can start to replicate now in different parts of South America, for example. So
yeah. It's like this kind of core ethos of like, how do we pay forward all the information we've gained so far and continue to like feed that back into the system to make it better and better. That's certainly the thing that kind of keeps me around, is like, oh, this is a community that wants to contribute in the long term. Cool. Well, we're at an hour. Thanks a ton for coming on. I appreciate all you guys sitting through this. I know some of this stuff doesn't apply to everybody. So Paul and Alvaro and Scott, super good to have everyone kind of sitting here through the parts that they're like, that's not really my part. But appreciate you coming on when it's your time to shine. So rippings, going forward, the best place to learn about stuff I found is Helium's Discord. But I know you guys are going to start to do more stuff on Twitter and kind of outreach on the rest of the channels. Is that right, Scott? I'm pretty sure it's right.
Yeah, I think for right now, we're sticking to, Discord is where the most engaged folks in the community are, so we keep things there, echo those things on Twitter. We try to get everything back to docs as the ultimate source of truth. So that's kind of the primary stuff, and there's certainly other things that filter out from there.
Cool. Super cool. Ripping. Paul, I shouted out the Twitter thing that you built today. That's like an alert system for all of the various kind of outages and bumps, so that if you're on Helium and you're wondering if something's working or not, is that it's Helium IoT is the handle, I think it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically the Twitter account I use for my data service. And so I communicate on the status and every issue we can have on it. So it could be a good way to get informed when something is happening on data part.
Yep, it's been super helpful for me. Cool, Alvaro. Anything else that you want to throw in there before we wrap this thing up? Anything we should be thinking about?
Not much more. So looking forward to see how many interesting things are going to be built in this new stage of the Helium network, and yeah, it's going to be great. I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. Cool. All right, guys, we'll wrap it there. Thanks a ton for coming on. I will see you on the Discord or next week on State of the Network. Rock and roll.
Thanks, Zach. Take care, all.
Bye.